I feel very much like an imposter, but you probably do too, in the sense of any time you accept a label, especially one ending in ISH or IAN or IST, you begin to wonder whether you are really yourself or an impersonation. I've been at New College often, but not in recent years. I came here a lot in the mid-'80s, and I can't be in New College without thinking about the founder of its great poetics program, Robert Duncan, who was certainly the greatest American poet of his time, and perhaps of our century past. He's in a decline right now. I mean, he died in 1988, and as so often will happen when you die, people forget you for a while, but his time will come. Duncan is especially relevant to our occasion because he was not Irish. I think he was especially relevant because he wasn't anything. He was adopted. While Lisa Jarneau, a wonderful poet who's working on his biography now, has insights into the nature of his real parentage, he didn't. Duncan didn't. He knew who he had been adopted by, who he had been raised by, these strange white Rosicrucians who lived somewhere on the other side of the bay. Yes, so he had to decide what he was. He decided he was a poet. He knew he was a homosexual. He knew he was not much more than that. What could he be? He used to talk about, you have to choose your grandparents. You have to choose your ancestry. Now, I suspect that he's a wonderful patron saint, a good Rosicrucian patron saint for our occasion now, because we, in a sense, have chosen our ancestry. Sometimes we are likely Irish, pure-blooded this or that. Sometimes we are wonderfully and amusingly, marginally Irish. I had never met a person who had actually been in Ireland until I was an adult. My very Irish sets of families had been in America for long enough so that no one I knew in the family had ever been in Ireland, except once a married uncle had gone there and didn't care for it a bit. So Ireland was a thing to choose. I chose it very much as a child. I wanted very much to be Irish. I thought of myself that way. But two great problems presented themselves to me. One of the problems was, why? Why did they come here? Why did they come here? Here didn't mean San Francisco, it meant Brooklyn, Long Island, New York. Why did they come to America? Why did they leave that place with all the kitsch and clamotin that we've been talking about, all the shamrocks and the hooey? Why did they leave? Or even if it wasn't that, even if it truly was beautiful, even if it was the dark and the power, why did they go? The famine was 2 years, but they came before it and they kept coming, and they still keep coming. What were they leaving? That was the problem I had as a child. And I felt it with a tremendous personal grief. What am I doing here? Why am I not walking in sunshine on O'Connell Street? Why am I not seeing the northern light of Ireland? Why aren't I watching those women who come out of the sea at night as seals and then turn into girls and seduce my father's imagination and then go back in the morning as seals again? I heard about them all through my childhood. Why did they come here where the seals were in the zoo and never changed into anything and swam around in scummy water with cigarette packs floating in them? People smoked in those days. I'm speaking of the past century. Why did they come here? That was the first problem I had. The second problem was, how could I get back? How could an 8-year-old get back to Ireland? And not the Ireland that presumably is there now, but the Ireland that they had come from. Well, those projects have been besetting me for years. About 15 years ago, I tried, since I'm a writer, the only thing I can do is make up the answers. You know, these scholars and critics can go out and find them. I have to make them up. And so I had to make up the answers to the questions and the answer. It occurs to me along the way, and it's come up a lot tonight and in this week, that there are two entirely different Irelands. And we've mostly been talking about the affirmative, positive Ireland, the Ireland of muchness, of amplitude, even if it's a bit plastic and shillelagh-ish on one side, perhaps, but it's still the Ireland of muchness, the Ireland of the plenum, the island of the saints and the scholars and all that stuff. But there's another Ireland, and that is the second object of my investigation, and that is the island of the minimal, the Ireland that really looks like the countryside out in the northwest, the barren but beautiful deserts of Ireland. There's a tremendous minimalism about the Irish, and we haven't heard much about it. We are always adding yet one more song, yet one more tune, yet one more drink, yet one more poem to the whole tide. But there's more to it. That is, there's less to it. And besides the great Irish poet Frank O'Hara, who is arguably the most important poet in the past years in terms of his influence on the shaping of contemporary poetry, there's that other great Irish poet, his direct contradiction and his direct coeval, Charles Olsen, who, having the misfortune of a Swedish father, never has appeared in general as an Irish poet, though he thought of himself as an Irish Catholic all his life. So here are these two Irish figures who are directly counterposed, Charles Olsen and the projective verse, the austere formal gestures of the Black Mountain School, and on the other side, the immense, almost French richness, the thickness, the épaisseur of O'Hara. So the Irish surrounding that. So those two themes have interested me. I got interested about 15 years ago in the question of the Irish excuses. So I wrote a small book, which Callahan was about to publish at one time, and then the press changed its direction. I don't know what happened. I changed my direction. I think it was that asteroid. The asteroid came down in Nevada that year. So I had written a little book called In Irish America, much like the slightly shorter title that we've heard this week. And In Irish America was trying to explore the richness of all the crap, all that shamrock stuff. It was trying to see what that's about. I was trying to go through it, not just to deny it skeptically, but to try to work it out. So I wanted to read you a couple of sections of this. And you'll see the way it is. It's simply an exploration of the excuses, of as Charlie says, of the schlock, the green schlock. Where does the green schlock take us if we go through it? So here are a couple of sections from this novella called In Irish America. In Ireland, the pigs live in the house. They burn peat. What does this mean? Shillelagh is a stick, Sheila a girl. We were Irish, but there was this other breed who talked oddly and mumbled and smelled unlike, like cloth and old dry cheese, they seemed to me. And such dusty, clean, fusty clothes of them, as if the closet went out walking. And they were Irish too, called Irish from Ireland, wherever that was. And weren't they funny? You couldn't tell them by drink or song, since we did too. Everybody cried together. They had escaped from themselves into themselves away, and it had worked. How could they bear to be here, I wondered, crying. I dreamt of O'Connell Street in sunshine, the long northern sunshine of home, the original, the authentic, the thing I prayed to be retroactively born in, the not this. I treasured every Irish stamp and those absurd clothy people, rough-skinned and thick-ankled, had, why, chosen to leave Ireland. Why? Even I could smell the failure in them, the failure that sang of how much money it was making. They had been found wanting by Maeve and the little people, and the stones aligned, and hence they were exiled here, Ghostland on Jamaica, Wantaw, Middle Village, to be consoled with a little money and Oldsmobiles to parochial schools. But what went on back in Magic Ireland? I heard on the radio that our John was dead, Count McCormick, who was there left of the suffering nation of fantasists now. It was not until I had carnally embraced for the first time a Jewish girl in the state of the Bronx that I learned that inescapable Ireland was, of course, as your worships will have realized long ago, a state of grace or drift of mind, or music heard, or something felt. Christ, I hold it in my fingertips. What a noble commonwealth such a state is. How I exulted when I heard it. It was a state of mind, safe from England and poverty. Why had they come? How could they leave the small truth, that accurate Ireland? Here is the answer. They were fleeing her. They were fleeing the woman. It was to begin with, they were people of the Devi, the goddess or first identity, supreme trance dancer, whose feet were our facts, and whose snood not even our stars could spatter or span, so far above she is any. She is supreme. They started in Central Asia, in Shambhala, the Buddhists call it, Shambhala, the old city, our old home. Thence, moving by moon and by carpenter carpet, faith that flies in horses another. Thence westering, then south and eastward to 8 India, Urs Persia, Am Armenia, Galestines in Galestine, gone Greek of Dana, Danaan. Kept moving, and wherever they came, their white thighs and deep-set malachite eyes giving them away, why people would come out to watch them pass and say, they are the people of the goddess. They're running away from their owner, their mistress. How dumb they are. How we wish we, Mlecha, could belong to her too. Then a few years ago, Charlotte and I went to Ireland. The first time I had tried to go, I had stood in Heathrow with my reservation to get on the plane. I'd been invited to spend a week in Kerry, which is a place in Ireland. I think I never did get there. I was going to go to Kerry, and I stood there waiting to get on the airplane, and I was beginning to get very, very nervous, very, very nervous. So I turned around and ran and jumped on the first plane to Paris that was leaving. And I spared myself a number of years of anguish. But finally it came a few years later. I was invited to go to that Jachnahake show in Donegal, and so we went. And there I finally found the other thing I was looking for. Not the Ireland of Ford or Olsen or O'Hara or Mariana Moore or any of the others, but of the greatest of all writers from Ireland, of all times, ever, Samuel Beckett. The Ireland of nothing, the Ireland of absolute denial, the Ireland of emptiness, Tongpanyi, Shunyata, the one last hope to empty us of all the shit, to empty us and be new again. So I saw that there because I had not known that. I had thought Beckett was a sort of eccentric, an exile who chose a different order of the minimal. But then I saw where he had come from. I saw not the decorous lace curtainness of his origins in Ireland, but I saw what Ireland also was. We were up in that marvelous desert mountain country in Donegal, a mountain called Errigal, which is the highest mountain in Ireland, and then Muckish nearby. And in between those two grand, mysterious mountains, clearly pre-human, clearly pre-terrestrial, dropped there like the holy house of Loretto from some other and better planet. There they sat, there they still sit. And there I met the Irish meditator, and I want to talk about him. This is the other one. The Irish meditator. By the bridge of tears under Muckish, and his chin was poked so his brow went to Errigal. I saw him sitting there in the cold of August mist, by the bridge, by a stele recently set up with handsome Gaelic carving, all about the sorrows. I saw him and nobody else did. I saw him because it's my business to turn into things nobody sees. In fact, you're not supposed to see me here. I am a sweater. I am a shadow broken across a rock. I am just an accent of the light, lost in gorse, in cold flinty water. Listen. I was standing there by the hot car on a cold day in August, glad of my sweater, and the mist walked down the slope with sheep in it, and so on, and the carving told about the sorrows of parting here at the little burn on the pass where they would, in past centuries, have said goodbye to their families and gone up over the mountain and down to Belfast. We all know that story. We all are that story. So the meditator was there, like the famous Gaulish sculpture in the rocks of France called Roc Pertuse. You know him, you've seen his picture, cross-legged Buddhist with yantras on his chest and belly, triangulams and diagrids, and there he was, thinking non-stop for 2,000 years, whereas this one was just last summer or the summer before, and he was there by the Donegal roadside, and I saw him, or I was him, the same forwards and backwards, and one of us was speaking. Your only enemy is the world. Hold what you love firm in mind. All you have is this, the mindful, mindful, the mind you are. So where was all the ship and the shore then, the going away and the staying home and maybe coming back rich a lifetime later? Maybe these bloody transactions called history were just like me, like this, like any moment, shadows on something hard, emigrants and exiles. To leave this moment is exile aplenty, or exile enough in our day that so privileges Bedouin mischance. Whereas, for several hundred years, this citizen has been sitting there keeping aware. Awareness of awareness, nothing else needed. Because, it seemed, someone, maybe him, maybe Sir Magpie in the bush, maybe a lamb bleated up the hill, maybe me, I sit by pebble and cold water. Because if you are aware of your awareness, you know everything. You'll tend to know everything. On this hillside, on this mind, you can spot anything that moves. You know what to do. You can be here. You can be for people who want to stop and talk to you. Even if when people stop and talk to other people who are there, they're to be talked to, the people who get talked to feel after a while like the slap wall of old urinals, stained with other people's uncomfortable expressiveness, other people who leave the encounter considerably relieved, perhaps even comforted, it may be, even by a too often one-sided exchange. So history had no place here. History has no place where things actually happen. That is, where an actual person is sitting motionless, notionless, aware. Stop motion, stop notion. History is dispersion, awareness, scattered into particulars that, once named, cease being part of anybody's awareness. So Waterloo is any time it's raining and the mud. So Boyne is any time you're sad. The meditator doesn't have to remember anything. His language is pure paying attention. Since he has nothing to remember, he's free to say the moment. His language, intelligible to Irish and English speakers and others, is now. Dialect of now, grammar of silence, silence. Je voudrais vous remercier du silence dans vos mots, she wrote to the old man whose work she had translated for some years. I want to thank you for the silence in your words. I think the Irish are the first people to have no history, or the only people who used up their history. while staying in one place. The Roma, gypsies, the Roma have to move around a lot to get rid of history, to keep history from sticking to their language and their transactions. But the Irish are about staying in one place. Even when they go somewhere else, they stay there, so that they become the Boston Irish, the Brooklyn Irish, the Chicago Irish, the Liverpool Irish, the Glasgow Irish. Having vacated history en masse, we are free to hate each other keenly and in detail, because everyone we meet, especially every one of us, is a constant threat to bring history back, he said. And said, if you really want history, look up historien. If you really want stories, look up historien. It means to investigate. And there's nothing to investigate but awareness, he said.